In January of 2012, a violent crime shattered the quiet of Angleton, Texas. This incident involved an elderly man, Alton Wilcox, and a man he knew, James Harris, Jr. Harris had previously performed lawn work for Mr. Wilcox. Alton Wilcox was 85 years old at the time of the attack. His wife, aged 69, was also present and severely injured during the same incident. Fortunately, Mrs. Wilcox survived the brutal assault. Mr. Wilcox suffered multiple stab wounds. One particularly grievous injury involved a knife driven through the left ventricle of his heart. This wound was immediately life-threatening. Medical professionals attempted surgical intervention to repair the damage. However, the surgery encountered a critical complication. Previous scar tissue caused the right ventricle of Mr. Wilcox's heart to tear during the procedure. While the initial wound was fatal, this surgical complication ultimately contributed to his death. Without the attempted repair, he would not have survived the initial injury. The perpetrator was identified as James Harris, Jr. The motive for the attack reportedly stemmed from a financial dispute. Mr. Wilcox had refused to lend Harris additional money. This refusal allegedly caused Harris to fly into a rage. The crime occurred in the context of a robbery. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Law enforcement quickly apprehended James Harris, Jr. He was located at a motel situated on the south side of Angleton. Harris was found in the victim's stolen vehicle at the time of his apprehension. Upon questioning, Harris confessed to the stabbing. This confession provided significant evidence against him. It solidified the case for the prosecution. Based on the evidence, including his confession, James Harris Jr. was convicted of the murder of Alton Wilcox. The legal process moved forward following this conviction. Under Texas law, murder committed while in the course of committing another felony, such as robbery, constitutes a capital crime. This legal definition made James Harris Jr. eligible for the death penalty. The decision regarding sentencing rested with the trial judge. After considering the case, the judge sentenced James Harris Jr. to death. This sentence placed him on Texas's death row. During the sentencing phase, the defense team for James Harris Jr. attempted to mitigate the potential sentence. Their goal was to argue against the imposition of the death penalty. They sought a lesser punishment, such as life imprisonment. A core argument presented by the defense centered on Harris's mental state. They contended that he was not mentally competent enough to be held fully culpable for his actions. This argument aimed to diminish his legal responsibility. The defense supported this claim by alleging that Harris suffers from brain damage. They proposed several potential causes for this alleged damage. These included exposure to numerous toxic substances since childhood. Habitual drug use was also cited as a contributing factor to the alleged brain damage. The defense presented expert opinion to support their claims. A defense-hired expert testified that Harris suffers from a brain injury. This injury, according to the expert, resulted in a major cognitive disorder. The defense argued that this condition impacted his capacity for rational thought and control. They presented this as a reason to spare him the death penalty. However, the trial judge ultimately rejected the defense's argument regarding Harris's mental competency and alleged brain damage as sufficient grounds for mitigation. The judge upheld the eligibility for and imposition of the death sentence. James Harris Jr. was admitted to Texas death row in December 2013. At the time of his admission, he was 54 years old. He has remained on death row for just over a decade as of his initially scheduled execution date. His initial execution date was set for March 13, 2024. However, this execution has been stayed. The stay was granted to allow for a legal appeal to proceed. The current appeal focuses on the jury selection process used in his trial. Specifically, the appeal raises a legal claim regarding whether the jury selection violated the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. This clause prohibits states from denying any person within their jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. The purpose of this appeal is to determine if the trial's proceedings were fair and just. It questions whether the process of selecting the jury that convicted and sentenced him was conducted without bias or discrimination. A successful appeal on these grounds could potentially impact the ultimate outcome of the case. It could lead to a new trial or a new sentencing hearing depending on the specific findings of the appellate court. However, if the appeal is unsuccessful, the stay will be lifted. In that event, James Harris Jr. will face execution. The legal system continues to review the procedural aspects of his conviction and sentence.